Ever since the internet's inception, odd and disturbing mysteries have occupied its forgotten and vast corners. The fascination with said mysteries has, of course, like everything else, waxed and waned over time, but it still remains, to this day, a breeding ground for all odd things, as well as a medium for information exchanges regarding these strange disturbances, such as lost media, YouTube oddities, true events, and disturbing blog posts. It hooked me into the subculture and has become a big reason of why I'm doing what I do today. Regardless of how known or unknown these mysteries are, I still feel compelled to both help keep the interest alive and offer new insights to these stories. Some are new, some are old, some, a little more recognized and analyzed than others, but all the same, they're disturbing and strange in their own right. But I'm not doing this alone. Luckily, you guys are in for something special tonight, because I've brought my friend, Norman's Index, along to help tackle some of these mysteries. And with that, we present to you the next episode of Dark Entries from Around the Internet. It's September 11th, 1997. A stranger calls into America's most popular paranormal radio show, frantic, shaking. He begins unloading a wild tale. And then, mid-sentence, just as he seems primed to reveal a strange truth, the entire radio station goes dark. Now, to first understand why this call became a renowned legend, we need to look into where and when it happened. Those of you who are a little closer to my age probably remember a radio show named Coast to Coast AM, which by today's standards was a far cry from some fringe podcast. Its legendary host and creator, one of my biggest influences, Art Bell, had become the voice of America's late-night paranoia. UFOs, government cover-ups, the paranormal, and shadow organizations. But Bell, however, had something that most lacked at the time and still do to this day: credibility. He was a licensed radio operator. He was former military. He understood signal propagation, frequency interference, technical systems, and everything else in between. When something strange happened on the show, even with how open-minded he was, he could quickly explain it. Coast to Coast also had a pretty straightforward format. People called in, usually anonymously, to share strange occurrences or stories. The show itself operated on openness, as they were loosely screened calls, and if you had something to say, Art let you say it. On the program that aired that night, someone had a lot to say.
Online, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello, Art.
Yes.
Hi. I don't have a whole lot of time.
Well, look, let's begin by finding out whether you're using this line properly or not.
Area 51.
Yeah, that's right. Were you an employee or are you now?
A former employee.
Former employee.
I was let go on a medical discharge about a week ago, and I've kind of been running across the country. Oh man, I don't know where to start. They're gonna they'll triangulate on this position really soon.
So you can't spend a lot of time on the phone. So give us something quick.
Okay. Okay. What we're thinking of as aliens, Art, they're extra-dimensional beings that an earlier precursor of the space program made contact with. They are not what they claim to be. They have infiltrated a lot of aspects of the military establishment, particularly the Area 51. The disasters that are coming, the military, I'm sorry, the government knows about them, and there's a lot of safe areas in this world that they could begin moving the population to now, Art.
But they're not doing anything.
They are not. They want the major population centers wiped out so that the few that are left will be more easily controllable.
Discharge.
I started getting...
Just 4 minutes into the call, the transmission stops. As in, not just the caller, but Art's entire broadcast. Dead air across every station carrying Coast to Coast AM had just lost its signal. In the studio, situated in Pahrump, Nevada, metaphorical and literal alarms blared. Panicked and confused calls from affiliates poured in, asking what the hell happened. Technical staff scrambling to understand how even the backup systems failed all at once. 30 minutes later, the broadcast returns. However, something was off. Art sounded different, genuinely shaken. He made the following statement.
In some way, something knocked us off the air, and we're on a backup system now.
It's the government, or...
I don't know.
It has to be something, though.
Well, did you hear... Now, you tell me, because you were listening.
That was awful strange.
There was a really weird guy on the air when it went off?
Yeah. Real weirded out.
Like, going sort of...
Losing it during a call of this nature, at the exact moment the caller describes what they are afraid of. That doesn't feel like coincidence, but rather intervention. There are, to me, only 3 ways to explain this call. First off, it was simply a hoax, and a damn good one. Either someone familiar with the show or a skilled actor with experience created a character. The goal was never to lie, but just to create memorable radio. As for the cutoff, unrelated, pure coincidence. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Here's the problem with that, though. It requires the hoaxer to have extraordinary luck. Second, it's a true technical error with uncanny timing. Atmospheric conditions, solar activity, ground equipment, malfunctions. Hey, shit happens, right? What contradicts this is Art's experience with radio and broadcast systems. He, as I mentioned, was no stranger to the platform and systems, and his confusion does seem incredibly authentic, not staged. That leaves us with one last theory. It was real. And the caller was silenced. A legit whistleblower through and through, saying real things. And someone, or perhaps even something, killed the uplink to prevent further disclosure. A crude method, but immediate nonetheless. Again, it has its faults, and it's the same as every whistleblower claim. No verification, no evidence beyond the voice itself. As with a majority of Coast to Coast's infamous segments, this could have just faded into the halls of internet and conspiratorial speculation. But the door never closes, does it?
And so that occurs, obviously. Sometimes I go to a line and it's dead and nobody's there, and that's what's happened. You know, we're on the cusp there. Anyway, I'm glad you made it back through.
Yeah, you got all my paranoia buttons running. I always get very nervous when I call you. I'm Brian. I hung up on you last week.
Oh, I see.
And I just figured, damn the torpedoes. I'll just do this and let the chips fall where they will.
All right.
Everybody, I am the Area 51 caller. That's my statement, and let you or whatever tear it apart.
You claim you're the Area 51?
I am the man.
how do you account for the fact, Area 51 caller,
Okay.
that part of the way through your spiel, the satellite went down?
I have no idea, and it scared the heebie-jeebies out of me that night. So what can I do to prove my claim here?
Well, I guess you could give us a little of what you gave us then so that we could hear it and know it to be you.
Are you sure you want me to do that, Art?
I'm positive.
Don't, Art, please. I don't want you to ask me to do this. If I start doing that guy,
Armed with an apology and, to be fair, a less than convincing reenactment, Art, although skeptical, eventually accepted it as truth. Others, however, weren't as easily swayed by the performance. Everything from audio analysis, mostly amateur, to standard methods of research were thrown by internet sleuths at it to debunk the authenticity of the caller's claims. However, to this day, no professional claims have ever been made. It's divided into speculation, dressed as evidence, to multiple sources claiming to be the caller, with zero veracity to their claims. There's one question that remains unanswered today about this infamous phone call, and it isn't whether someone lied, but which caller lied. 28 years later, and we still don't definitively know. If, in fact, he was telling the truth, somewhere out there, a former government employee made one hell of a phone call, one that describes something relatively important, 20 years later. If he was lying, however, then the hoaxer pulled off one of, if not, the most successful paranormal prank in radio history, not counting War of the Worlds, through nothing but vocal performance and impossible timing.
You will have to forgive me, because what I am about to discuss with you is a sin. Nevertheless, here we are, and there is a slot on this video that I am responsible for. And as I am burdened with this purpose, I must divulge to you what I have. Go to the YouTube search bar and type in Found on the Tape, and you will find a very nondescript YouTube channel of the same name created over 14 years ago. There is nothing in the channel description, just 3 videos. Clip 094.mp4, clip 095.mp4, and clip 084.mp4. All of the clips are under a minute long, and all are equally disturbing. Clip 094, we see a shaky shot of somebody's legs, what appears like a cassette player, a crowded elevator full of people staring at our cameraman, and then the defining shot of this whole ARG. A woman staring up at a railing, and then as the camera pans, we see a head crammed between the rails with hollow eyes, mouth agape, almost smiling, and what appears to be blood splatter. The clip then cycles back to the legs and cassette player and then ends. Clip 095 begins once more with the shaky leg shot, a blurry shot of a man, then an empty room with a large window looking out at a tree where a series of numbers and letters crop up on screen. We will come back to this. The next shots show us what looks like an armless girl with hollow eyes, and then what looks like another armless person with some strange umbrella-like aura, followed again by the blurry man and leg shot before closing the video. Clip 084 begins with hazy smoke, a tunnel, what looks like a rocket's nose cone with something ejecting from the top, an oddly geometric cave with some pipes to the left, and a pair of opening eyes at the end. Then we see an up-close shot of the pipes, the rocket nose cone again, with a gyrating triangle, a map of an underground complex of some sort, the smoky haze, and finally a flash frame of a yellow tunnel with a shadowy figure at the end. So, on its own, the footage definitely has a very creepy vibe. The background white noise underlaying random shots of everything from cassette tapes and pipes to skull faces and armless girls is disturbing at the very least. But it all feels very disjointed. It's really hard to parse anything at all from it, especially since there is nothing in the video descriptions to give us a clue, except for that short clip from clip 095. So let's dig in there. The clue from clip 095 contains a hexadecimal cipher that leads to a mega upload address containing a custom Half-Life 2 map that can also be loaded into Gary's mod. So map 1 spawns you into a pretty messy room with a bed and trash strewn across the room. There also happens to be a skeleton in the corner as well, but the interesting thing about this map is that when you try and leave through the only door in the room, you get this full screen jump scare that looks like the skull face from clip 095. And that's really all there is to map 1. So how do we even get to map 2? Well, the YouTube channel Found on the Tape posted a text formatted upload to their channel. However, YouTube is totally different now, and all text uploads go to the post tab or community page for channels, so now we're dealing with lost media due to format changes made to YouTube. Even utilizing the Wayback Machine reveals that it only has snapshots of the channel going back over a few years. It's unfortunate, but players and other YouTubers have archived what happened. The text upload was a message to players warning them that anything posted outside the YouTube channel should be considered not a part of the game, and included another hex code. When decrypted, it revealed foundonthetape@gmail.com and a file size, and when emailed would auto-respond with a message that repeated "I'm stuck" and the mega upload link for map 2. Map 2 spawns the player into a maze-like cramped ventilation shaft. This map has 2 possible endings. What everyone refers to as the good ending is where the player finds a drop in the ventilation shaft and falls into it and dies. Doesn't really seem like a good ending, but the quote-unquote bad ending involves the player being attacked by this quadruple amputee the game files calls Charpel. Pretty weird. So, on to map 3. Map 3 starts the player in a similar ventilation shaft that isn't quite as claustrophobic as map 2, but after a bit of exploring, the player will stumble across the room from map 1. Opening the door that held the jump scare, however, leads the player into another maze-like structure, and it ends the same as map 2, with the player falling down a drop to their deaths. Right, so now we're getting a bit of continuity. So what do we find in map 4? And how do we find map 4? Well, this map was revealed through binary code released by the YouTube channel on its page, similar to the message from map 2. Map 4 is another huge maze-like structure with 3 distinct layers. The first layer just includes some debris and boxes. Layer 2 includes corpses and blood-smeared walls. And then the final layer is a flooded passage with debris and bodies where the player is chased by an armless humanoid that the players cannot escape from. And that's it. So let's examine what we got here. The things that connect the videos to the Half-Life 2 maps are the underground areas and the armless creature, and Skullface from the first video I think could probably be Charpel from map 2. It appears to be some type of facility where something went wrong, but it's really hard to say what that could even be. I mentioned in video 3 that one clip looked like a rocket cone, but as far as I know, rockets don't eject anything from cones like that. The cone also carries a similarity to the armless aura creature in the same clip. So I can't really say what kind of facility this is, except that it's definitely underground. As to what happened, that's up in the air as well. We keep getting clues and hints of people being trapped down here and that there is no escape, but we keep going down in every map. If the players or the people stuck in the map wanted to at least attempt an escape, then they're definitely going the wrong way. It also seems that the maps are a journey of sorts, where everything map 2 onwards just kind of keeps taking them down. But what is the purpose again? Are they trying to find something or someone deep in the facility? Are they trying to fix the problem, or are they driven by some type of psychosis deeper into the structure? The whole path to the bottom is littered with corpses, inferring that many people in the facility followed this path down for some reason or another. But why? And here's the sin I'm burdened with. I went through all of this with you, and there is no answer. Clip 084 and Map 4 were the last things that were ever released, and nothing in the last 14 years has been found in any of this that leads to anything else. What we are left with is 3 videos, 4 maps, an underground facility, a quadriplegic, an armless person, and a trail of bodies. There are no answers, and there will likely never be any. Time and the internet are slowly reclaiming what's left as well. I had to double back several times just trying to piece together how the clues were found because it's misrepresented in several places. And I'm likely to be misrepresenting something here in some way because of the lack of information I have. It's a puzzle missing pieces, context lost forever, left in the mind of the creator, and what we are left with is a path underground that leads only to the misery and hopelessness of those trapped there to their fates. It's not a satisfying ending, but it's the only one we'll ever get. What's more terrifying than that?
All right.
Unexpectedly.
Should be not to let the names or anyone be known.
When a deputy entered the Rancho Santa Fe mansion, it was the smell that hit him first. Thick. Suffocating. Then he saw it. 10 bodies in purple shrouds, but he'd only found the first room.
Dispatcher 55.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, I need to report an anonymous tip. Who do I talk to?
Okay. This is regarding what?
This is regarding a mass, and I can give you the address.
Okay, what's the address?
It's 18241 Colina Norte in Rancho Santa Fe.
And it's a house?
At the house.
Okay, what happened there?
Well, I think there was a religious group that committed.
How long ago? Do you know about how long?
In March 1997, 39 members of a religious cult took their lives in a ritual, believing they were to be ascended to a spaceship trailing the Hale-Bopp comet. It still remains, to this day, yet another example of immense tragedy through spiritual manipulation. But there's something here that doesn't quite make sense. The platform in which they recruited from still remains active almost 3 decades later. Not as a memorial or an archive. It's paid for, it's maintained by followers who, by all accounts, should no longer exist. Although founded in 1974 by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, it wasn't until the 1990s that the Heaven's Gate cult gained notoriety by both evolving the Doomsday Cult narrative and by utilizing new technology, a spiritual medium to broadcast their message: the internet. On March 26, 1997, a call from beyond would beckon Applewhite and his followers to ascend forth, in line with the appearance of the Hale-Bopp comet. What followed, as mentioned, is nothing short of disturbing and tragic. Those in line with their beliefs would participate in the exit, leaving behind a farewell message on the website. But this is where the, and I'll quote myself, really weird shit begins. Almost 28 years later, the site still remains actively maintained. But by who? We can see pages all updated, refreshed, and corrected, but most importantly, accessible. At least 2 surviving members, known by and appointed by Heaven's Gate as the Tela, claim responsibility as those chosen to stay behind and continue to spread the message. In the years following this tragedy, journalists, researchers, and curious internet goers like myself sent emails out to the address, and without fail, they answered back. The first wave of sources cited that responses did in fact return, sometimes within hours, sometimes within days, but they arrived nonetheless. The tone was cold, cryptic. We are still here. The information is still available. Many of these responses vary in cryptic fashion, even those that claim that the cult is done, and go on as recently as this year. If the cult is truly dead, why not just shut the site down? While you could argue that it is to help spread information and archive the events at Heaven's Gate, you could also argue that there might be more exit opportunities. Now, there are experts in the field of cult psychology and schools of thought that suggest something truly disturbing. The site doubles as a recruiting tool and a beacon for dormant believers strangled by the grip of average society. Believers, of course, in a theory that portrays the website as a check-in point for those faithful who are still waiting. The movement, in their eyes, truly didn't die. It simply lost visibility. Even stranger still, over the years, people have tried to mirror the site, alter its content, or have tried to shut it down altogether, yet it always resurfaces, untouched and unchanged. You know, to me, it's almost as if the internet refuses to let it die off, which is crazy to me given its history. Even while the rest of the web evolved, specifically into what you see today, ad-heavy, mobile-friendly, whatever you want to view it as, Heaven's Gate remains frozen in time. A digital monument that denies the entropy of the internet. And every year, the Tala, or some entirely unknown group, renews that domain. Every renewal, a calculated, deliberate, repeated decision, and a costly one as well. All those fees and maintenance, it adds up, and none of it is free. There is zero earthly benefit. So why? If you were certain your story wasn't finished, what would you do to preserve your return? One thing in all of this that may get lost by some is the section of the website, our position against an anti-disclaimer for a cult that committed rituals. It's not that, however, though. Their actions weren't but voluntary departure. They left this as a message for future students, and this is how they would make sure it would still be there, waiting. And it 100% suggests that at least someone out there is still a true believer in Applewhite's work, still waiting for the sign. Heavensgate.com was certainly supposed to be the final message of a fanatical cult, a digital eulogy of sorts, but instead, it remains an enigma, an open doorway, a constant invitation, preserved by the internet, waiting for those who are ready to accept their truth. Whether anything will come of this, a conclusion, or perhaps someone to answer that call, is a question that to this day still haunts the web.
When a train won't stop, don't go.
On face. I'm the
September 29th, 2016. Commuter train 1614 departs from the Spring Valley station in New York at 7:23 a.m., heading for the end of the line at the Hoboken terminal in New Jersey. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just another day, another dollar, another trip, another hop along like any other. This day, however, train 1614 draws low on the cards.
Witnesses say the train never seemed to slow down, hit a safety bumper, went airborne, even took down the roof.
It went up and over the bumper block.
At 8:45 a.m., the train comes into Hoboken station, but the train doesn't slow down. It collides with the bumper blocks at the end of the line and goes off rails. At the end of the day, there are over 114 injuries, 1 fatality, and a train engineer that doesn't remember the crash ever happening. If you're here watching this video, I would assume that you're familiar with the analog horror series Local 58. If you're not or just need a refresher, it's a horror series that involves a fictional local broadcasting station that seems to be constantly hijacked by someone or something for nefarious purposes. Some hijacked broadcasts tell you to go look at the moon, just trust me bro, it's totally cool and you won't regret it at all. Or some, like the contingency broadcast, ask you to, well, Take drastic actions against your family and then finally yourself. The horror is reminiscent of other found footage horror like the Blair Witch Project or the Green Inferno because it has this feeling of authority or legitimacy. All the familiar storytelling beats, the camera angles, the shrieking score are absent, and we are presented with something that mimics reality. The horror of Local 58's broadcast isn't from the monsters or the horrible events it is portraying, but because our mind has to ask the question, is this real? Even if it's an obvious answer, the portrayal of it coming from a source of authority, such as a local news broadcast, is incredibly unsettling. These are the institutions we place our trust in. Many of us know they aren't infallible, but we at least expect them to have our best interest at heart. So what does a train derailment have to do with Local 58's flavor of hijacked horror broadcast? Would you, could you, on a train?
One person is dead. She is seen here on the platform.
This alert message interrupted a broadcast from WKTV, a news station based in Central State, New York, at their 6 p.m. broadcast, and then later at their 10:38 p.m. broadcast on September 28th, one day prior to the train derailment. After the broadcast, the news station took to social media to clear up the confusion. Quote, "If you are watching our 6 p.m. newscast, you saw a hazardous materials warning message. There is no such warning. It was a technical error." Sounds simple enough, but the following statements and articles from WKTV continue to muddy the water. Update. Another warning message was sent out in error at 10:38 p.m. There is no emergency. This message originated from FEMA as a test and had the national location code in it. Tests should not have the code as it is automatically retransmitted. We apologize for any inconvenience. We have contacted New York State Broadcasters Association, who administered the emergency alert system in New York. We are working with FEMA to resolve this. Our apologies for the confusion this may have caused. FEMA replied that they did not send this out. They will launch a full investigation into how their codes were hacked. WKTV seems to be the only target of this hack. For now, we have disabled the codes in our decoder that trigger this alert. If there is a real national alert, we will still receive it from the local radio stations we are assigned to monitor. WKTV will cooperate fully with FEMA, providing information about our hardware, software, and internet access, and will provide log files from our devices. This information will be helpful to FEMA to track down the source of this hack. We're in contact with the NYS Broadcasters Association and FEMA. All of this, the test emergency broadcast, the cryptic Dr. Seuss quote, WKTV stating they were hacked, and a train derailment all converge on a point of absurd coincidence. But the cherry on top was that the train engineer stated he had no memory of the crash. Of course, theories online span from government psyop conspiracies to paranormal events. So what's the official story?
That goes to the heart of the arbitrator's decision, which agreed...
The attorney for the engineer released a statement later in November that his client suffered from sleep apnea, and it went undiagnosed even after he was cleared by an NJ transit screening program just a few months prior in July. The NTSB, or National Transportation Safety Board, would also corroborate this statement on February 6, 2018 as the probable cause. Data recovered from the train's black box also noted a braking action a second before impacting the bumper at the end of the tracks. It provides a story of an overworked and drowsy engineer dozing off at the wheel, but what about the strange broadcast from WKTV? FEMA released this statement. The EAS device installed at the TV station was configured to pull a test and development message aggregator instead of or in addition to the production message aggregator. Wednesday evening, a developer was testing his software and sent several messages into the test and development message aggregator, populating the message field with some Dr. Seuss lines. The developer never intended for the public to see his test message, and the TV station was unaware that its EAS device was monitoring a test environment. The EAS device was reconfigured, and the unsuspecting developer briefly lost his access to the test environment, while FEMA confirmed that there was no ill intent by any party. So our official story is essentially about a drowsy train engineer and an IT problem. Unfortunately, someone did lose their life, and it is a tragedy, and I wouldn't begin claiming it's a government conspiracy or a paranormal event. It doesn't, however, make it any less unsettling.
We started in the woods by our campfires, where stories remain buried. Nights filled with tales of ghosts, urban legends, and folklore made real. But then as the seasons passed, we turned to our screens. Everything from hijacked broadcasts, tampered signals, footage that winked in and out of existence just long enough to draw someone's morbid curiosity before vanishing into the digital abyss. We find websites that defy removal, videos, blogs, and images that should have been forgotten years ago, but they still live on. Still waiting for visitors to stumble upon them, whether by design or by sheer luck. There's a certain type of unsettling yet strangely nostalgic factor in some of these curiosities. But what do these anomalies tell us, the viewers? Who lied on Art Bell's radio show, and what knocked the power out at a strangely convenient time? Why do countless ARGs disappear, unanswered, unfinished, or just become lost to disinterest, only to claw their way back into the forefront of the internet, fresh in the eyes of someone who stumbled upon it for the first time? A cult, long dead, still maintains a website that, by all accounts, shouldn't exist anymore. But what is the definitive reason? And perhaps, most important of all, how does one begin to separate coincidence? The internet evolved from a revolutionary, yet simple tool into a vast breathing archive that decides what gets remembered and what sinks to the bottom, or just all out erased. There are some mysteries that don't just fade away, and it's simply because they're unsolvable. But then again, maybe that's how it's supposed to be. The internet mirrors who we are as human beings. It amplifies our fears, it feeds our obsessions, and it tricks us into seeing things we want to see, where there might be none. But spend just enough time in that reflection, and you will begin to feel it. That creeping sense that you're not just observing anymore, that you may have become part of that mystery. Don't second guess the broadcast intrusion that felt wrong, and don't forget that username that disappeared after one cryptic post, because somewhere out there, on the internet, another unexplained upload is being made, another signal is breaking through, and another person might just be sending their last message. And the algorithm has already decided who gets to see it. Now, for those of you who decided that they wanted to stay till the very end because you guys don't have a short attention span, I really appreciate it, and I love y'all, And I want to give a huge shout out to my boy Norman's Index. He was incredibly helpful during this whole process and was an absolute blast to work with. And please, after watching this video, go check out his channel. He is incredibly underrated and might honestly have one of the best Local 58 analysis that I've seen in a hot minute. That's it for tonight. Look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. I love y'all. Stay weird.